And we are live. Hi, it's so good to have you on. And hi, everybody who's joining. We are here today with a special episode of Indie Author Live Chats. We have Becca Johnson on right now and Hannah Richards on right now. And Tara Webb is also trying to join us. She's having a little bit of technical difficulty, so we'll see if she can pop on and join us in a minute. But thank you both so much. It is such a pleasure to meet you live after all this time.
You too.
You too.
Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So this is so interesting because we've been talking to authors all year, and I love this topic for this week so much, loving the author journey, because I think we can get swept up in some of those more challenging aspects of being an author. But both of you have a very unique role in the author journey. So why don't you introduce yourselves, Becca? You can go first, and then Hannah, and then we'll get into audience questions.
Okay, sounds good. So my name is Becca Johnson, and I actually have two Instagram accounts because I have two sides to my business. So there's Becca Johnson Creative, which is helping authors and editors and other people in the writing industry with their social media, especially Instagram. And I focus a lot on strategy. So I do strategy intensive, stuff like that. And then the other Instagram is Becca Lee Writes, and that is my book coaching and author account. So with that one, I love to work with authors, and it can either be at the beginning of the writing process as they're figuring out their world and their characters, or helping them as they're writing, giving them feedback on that, having coaching sessions to help them through that writing process, and also manuscript evaluations at the end. So each step of the writing process.
That's awesome. And hey, Tara, so good to have you.
Hello.
Zara.
We're just going around self-introducing, and you're in here just in time because Hannah's going, and then we'll let you just introduce yourself, talk a little bit about, both your writing, because you've got published books out, and then, what you do as far as supporting other authors as well.
Yeah, I'm Hannah
Cool.
Richards. Which should go first, Tara or I? Like, she's on that side, so does she go first? I'm too rule oriented, apparently.
Hannah, why don't you go ahead and go, and then Tara
Okay.
will do you, and I'll go last.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, I'm Hannah Richards. I'm a social media manager for authors. I own my own company, and I also work for a book publicist as their social media manager. So I manage different accounts for them, anywhere from like nonfiction to fiction. It depends. And then what I specialize in my own business is consulting and social media strategy. So what I do mostly there is like I do Dream Reader Boot Camp, which is about finding your dream reader, those kind of things, and branding oriented stuff too as well. So I really help with finding you your dream readers, so you don't have to stress about that as much.
That's awesome. And I know that's a big part of like stress and a big challenge for authors is connecting with readers, because I think there's a misconception, oh, authors all want to get rich and famous. It's like, well, not necessarily rich. It's nice to make some money, but more having readers that say, this book connects with me. I
Mhm.
resonate with what I'm reading. Like that's the big, big goal. So, um,
Yeah.
so Tara, thank you for joining us again. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, can you hear me okay? Awesome. Okay. I'm Tara Webb, and I am a mother of four boys and a work at home mom, and I just published my first book last year called Discerning Her Shadows. And I do other things like with my business. I have a podcast called Weaving Magic Podcast with my close friend. And as far as working with other authors and stuff like that, I really enjoy supporting other authors and helping them and reminding them of the confidence that's already inside of themselves. I was a coach with that for a little bit. Decided to kind of step away and myself, focus on my books. But I really, even if it's just, messaging on Instagram and talking in general with people, it's helping them remember their passion around why they started doing what they're doing. And I believe that you can publish yourself in any way, not just in, publishing a book. You can publish yourself via being an artist, or even just in your own business, because when you do put yourself out there, you realize all the work that you had to go through to even do that. Like, there's all the self work that you have to do to put a book out. Like, you really have to go inside yourself and deal with some things. And that's just kind of what I'm here to do, to support other authors and other people in doing that work, and then feeling that confidence of once they put themselves out there, enjoying it, not like, beating themselves up afterwards.
I love that. And so I can say, as an author, just following the 3 of your accounts has been so uplifting, because I started this journey a little over a year and a half ago, and it was daunting starting out. It was even more daunting getting close to releasing, and then right after releasing, I hit what seems to be the standard down that a lot of authors hit. Oh, the book is out, and sort of that moment of, there's no finish line. If I want to be an author, I'm now in this cycle for the rest of my life. And do I really have what it takes to make that work? So for those of you who are viewing, if you have questions about ways to improve the author journey, ways to remember what Tara said, what you loved about writing that got you into this journey, please drop them in the comments and we'll answer them as we go along. But I do have some questions just to start us off while the viewers think about what they want to ask. And I'll put it out there, and whoever would like to answer first can answer, and everybody is, of course, welcome to chip in. But the first one is just going into writing. How do you recommend keeping sort of that love and that joy for what you're writing there when you get into the long phases of, maybe I loved it while I was drafting it, but I hated having to write the ending because I had to leave it, or I hated having to edit it because I felt like I was killing my baby. So what piece of advice would you give to authors sort of in that phase of their writing journey?
I can hop in. Even though I'm trying to think of, I actually was not really the kind of person, I don't know if Becca and Hannah, if either of you were, where I hated the editing I hated it in the sense of like, how long it took, having to go through it and that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I'm the kind of person that puts all of my apples in a basket in the beginning and like tries to make the first draft so perfect, and it never works out. And so the editing part is actually really, I think for someone who's having trouble going through the editing part, it's more of a refining. I think it's not, don't look at it as like, I'm cutting up my baby, or that I am, I don't know how to word it. It's more of just looking at like, what I have here is beautiful, but every person, every piece of art has to go through a refining process to get even more. You look at the stones, the coal, and if you want it to become a diamond, it has to go through that pressure. Each of us have to go through pressure, through difficult things to come out on the other end, and so does your work. And in the same regards of that, it's like giving it to an editor is terrifying, and you feel like they're going to hate it, and they give you feedback, and you're like, they do hate it, even if the feedback is not bad. At least for me, like I just judged everything that my editor told me, even though she was doing it out of love. And so it's just reminding yourself that, especially I feel like in the Bookstagram community, we're all here to support each other. And so if you are having any worries about like, I feel like I'm over editing my book, or does it need more editing? Ask someone to look over it with you. A bunch of us will do what we can to be an alpha reader or a beta reader, but also just trust your instinct. You as the author know what your book is supposed to be about. I mean, the characters may shift, they may like jump off a cliff all of a sudden, but you, for the most part, know what your book is going to be and where it needs to go. So just trust that gut of like, this is why I started, and I know where I'm supposed to end up. Even if I don't know the journey along the way, I know it's going to end here.
great. Great tips. Becca, what you've got something to add to that too?
Yeah. So I was gonna kind of jump off of what Tara has said about like people in the community, first of all, are very supportive overall. And like you can feel like if you are open about the things that you're going through, there's probably other people who are also going through it and they're going to relate with you and empathize with you. And that's going to help you feel better. And they might have, some tips or whatever that can help, maybe they even just have something they say that gets you that inspiration back, if that makes sense. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then also, yeah, show your stuff to other people and remember too that like a person who like is an editor or a book coach, they're doing it because they love stories and they're not there to tear your stuff apart or tell you that you're a bad author or tell you this is a bad story or anything like that. They're looking, for that diamond and they're like, okay, here's how we can, polish it more, uncover it more. And they are on your side and they're on your team. So reminding yourself of that too, I think helps. And then I know for me personally, I write like Tara does, where it's like I like to self-edit and I have to make myself stop sometimes and like just keep going because I can get stuck, like, oh, I have to find the perfect word. And it's like at some point, just mark that and come back to it later because you can get yourself stuck for forever trying to find that perfect word. And then all the creativity just kind of dies because you're just frustrated searching for that word, So getting some distance or like making yourself just like, okay, we're going to move on to something else now can really help as well. So.
Yes. And I love the vulnerability. I have a question to tie in there. And Hannah, I think I've seen you post something similar to this, just about how we think, oh, I don't want to post that there could be any bumps at all because my readers are following me. And what if they know that I'm having bumps? And honestly, I've found that in at least Bookstagram, my readers have interacted and connected with me more for sharing that it's not butterflies and rainbows all the time with writing. It's not like I'm constantly complaining about the writing journey, but to stop and say every once in a while, oh, I've hit a wall here or something, and to see how the authors raise each other up seems to promote the whole community and not just, me as an author. But I'm curious what you would have to say to that.
Yeah, so I think like one of the biggest things to think about with social media is there is one way where you're posted forever and then one way where it's gone for 24 hours, which is stories. And if you want to try something, if you want to be vulnerable and you're not quite comfortable yet, go on your stories and try it first. And you're going to get a ton of support. And normally if you put like a question sticker or get some sort of poll up there, people will start responding to you. And that's really, in my opinion, where you start your community is on stories, not so much on your posts.
That's great. And did you have anything to chip into the mindset going into the early part of the journey?
So I think like the biggest thing to think about when it comes to like the start of the journey as an author is like, don't put so much pressure on yourself, because I think that is what I see a lot of the time with authors is they're like, I have some date that I have in my mind that my book needs to be published by, but it doesn't actually have any real reality to it. It's what they want in their head. So sometimes they're actually messing with their own book by trying to publish too quickly. So I think that's like the most important thing I would want authors to know is like, you need to look at like what timeline is right for your audience, not so much what timeline is right for you.
Yeah, great tips. Awesome advice. CK Sorens is on Facebook and says, I like thinking about it as a cycle. Once launch happens, there's the relief of taking a break and then the joy of being able to return to the fun part, which is writing. Yes, I think the more entrenched we get into this journey, at least for me, the more your cycles start to overlap. And then it's like at some point, I'm editing one and I'm writing one and I'm marketing the others. But that all can be ramped up. Like Hannah was saying, go at what your audience needs. Go at what you need to be able to put out the quality you want. That'll take a lot of that stress off. So the second part of the writing journey is getting ready for publication, and that seems to be the second big potential hang up. First is getting over the my book is worth putting out. You know, I have a book, but there's tons of other. When there's Brandon Sanderson beating world records on Kickstarter, and I'm a fantasy author, what right do I have to put my book out there? Like getting over that initial imposter syndrome, and then asking who's going to read it, who's going to sign up for my newsletter. I think that might be the phase where a lot of authors go through their first big identity of crisis moment. I don't know. But what would you have to say about remembering how to enjoy, how to love where you are in the process when it comes to getting ready to actually publish?
Well, something that I like to say a lot is that like the world needs more stories, right? And like just because you shouldn't compare yourself to like the big, you know, like Brandon Sanderson with his big multi-million-dollar launch thing. Like there needs to be more stories out there, and no one else can tell the story exactly how you're telling it. And there is at least one person out there, probably more, who needs the story that you are telling. And people can like more than one book too. It's not really a competition. And I think sometimes people start to think, you know, they measure themselves against other authors and think, oh, I have to measure up to this. And you don't. It's not a competition. People want more than one story, more than one book, and you might tell the story that they're looking for. So I think reminding yourself of that can help a lot to get you through that next, like that imposter syndrome thing, because imposter syndrome can hit really hard, right? But your story is going to resonate with multiple people, and you could be writing someone's favorite book or someone's favorite character and not know it right now. But if you give up or stop because of the imposter syndrome, that person's never going to have that book that they're going to love. So
Absolutely. Tara, what would you say to this phase? Because this is actually where I found you when I started Bookstagram and I was getting ready to publish. I first came across your videos and you're basically like, remember to love yourself, remember, you know, who you are as a person, and I appreciate that so much. So love to hear what you have to say about
Yes,
this.
I would say remember why you started. Did you start writing to sell books? You know? And while all of us would love to sell millions of copies, right? We would love for people to read our books. I know I started because I had a story that was burning to be told. And I didn't care if another person picked up my book at all. I wrote it for me. You're the only person that matters. If you are writing, yes, you want other people to read it, but just go back to why. Like what your initial reason was. I don't think any of us really write for money. It's a nice thought to eventually you be that way, like where we either have money coming our way to be an author. It's an awesome thought, but I don't think we start off that way. And so if you're worried about all of the other, like the financial stuff, or like, you know, someone's not going to pick up my book, or they're not going to like it, or what if they don't like it? Do you like it? That's the main question. If you like it, who gives a flip what others think? There is going to be someone who resonates with you. I mean, it's funny because I like what I write, and I read over my work and I'm like, that, and then I'll go write, you know, I'll read somebody else's, another indie author. I'll read their book and I'll be like, wow, I don't write like that. And I've learned that I actually am not my ideal reader. And so I'll cut out for a second. There we go. And so since I'm not my own ideal reader, I'm not going to judge my book based off my own standards in that sense. Like I love it and I'm going to put it out there, but I definitely would rather read, you know, like I love Catherine's book, like that kind of thing. I'm going to read someone else's book and be like their ideal reader. So you can love yourself and put it out there, but also don't judge it too harshly because you may not be your own ideal reader. There may be somebody else who's like, yes, that's what I need. And you can't know that if you stop writing. And also I have a huge thought about imposter syndrome, but that's like a long story. Just know that if you're feeling imposter syndrome, that it's just love on yourself and love on those around you. And that's the main thing of that. Imposter syndrome is a huge thing.
Yes, it really is. And I think so many authors, we slip into it maybe here or there at different points in the journey, and you don't realize it, and then you look around because not many people are open about it. It's like, oh, well, you see somebody that you love and they're so excited, you hype their book up for months, their book comes out, and then they just vanish, which we're getting to in the next point. I'm getting a little bit ahead, but, and a lot of that is due to the silence that comes with imposter syndrome. So, Hannah, what about you? What do you think about, ramping up? Is it good enough? Is this worth doing? Have I made a huge mistake?
Well, I think something that people underestimate is like just the power of community. So something I think helps a lot of new authors is to just, well, they're about to publish, really focus on their community, because sometimes it can feel really lonely if you aren't making those connections. And honestly, social media without connections is like probably the most boring thing. I'm not gonna lie. Like, who wants to post and have no one respond? And that really, most of the time when people don't have anyone responding to them, like sometimes it's the algorithm, but a lot of the times it's just that they don't know enough people and they haven't tried to make those connections. And really focusing on like actually connecting with people will help you to feel more like you have people in your journey with you.
Definitely. Yeah, writing seems lonely, but it doesn't have to be. That was the biggest thing I walked away from 2021 with, is just the eye opener. It doesn't have to be me on an island. It's awesome. So that sort of brings us to our third phase, and the third phase is my book is out. I made it through, I put it out, and like I just talked about, hello, wall and slump. Whether that's a week later or a month later, how do you recommend focusing on the afterward when you realize that you're going to be actively marketing for the rest of the book's life? And you're also going to be now, writing another book, possibly, continuing to build relationships, continuing to connect with readers, and decide sort of where you fit in all of that. How do you suggest that people keep a positive outlook and remember their love for writing in that?
I would say for this, a huge thing for me is I tend to push myself really hard when I'm writing a book, and I don't take much time to rest. And I truly believe that if you're going through a writer's slump, it's more so, in my opinion, because you haven't given yourself the chance to relax. Just go and be, and you know what, today I'm not going to write. Today I'm going to go and experience life, because I think that's a lot of where our books come from, is from our life. And after publishing the book and then knowing like I had a lot to keep promoting, it feels like an endless cycle. I think first off, when you publish the book, just stop and enjoy that day. Like, don't think to like, I have to do this, this, and this. You published a book. Like, that's wild. That's amazing. You are just fantastic. Just acknowledging yourself and celebrating yourself for that huge accomplishment. And then giving yourself however long you need to just rest, to enjoy being a published author without putting more on your, well, my readers need this next book, I have to do this outline. Yeah, the readers probably do want your book coming up next, but they also wanted books from, J.K. Rowling, and they also wanted books from Jane Austen. How long did it take Jane Austen to get her books out there? I mean, she wasn't doing it to a year. It wasn't what it is now in our culture of like, you got to get it out there and grind it to get done. That's not why we became authors. We became authors to enjoy it. And if we're not enjoying it, the readers sure aren't going to enjoy it, because they can feel it through your writing. So the biggest thing is allow yourself to rest. From rest comes that creativity and that joy and that passion for what you have.
Absolutely. Yes. And just remembering to celebrate, as part of that rest. Remembering to celebrate with your readers. I think for me last year, that was another big thing that I saw some authors do that I was like, whoa, I wish I had done that, and that I will be trying to do in future years. Tied into that, Tara, is they took a rest and they told everybody, I'm not going to be writing for a week. This week we're going to party because my book is out. And then they involved the readers in their rest, so to speak. And I was like, that's so great. because you're connecting with your readers. You're giving them a chance to talk to you about what they're reading. Tell me who you loved today. Tell me what you thought of Villain today. Like, I was just blown away. It seemed like such a creative way to include them, but also not worry about writing that week, not worry about the next thing that week. Um, so, Hannah, what would you say, because that ties a little bit into the social media aspect side, which I know you're really, really involved in. How do you say overcoming that silence that you see from a lot of authors? Like every day, countdown every day, countdown every day, 2 days, 1 day, book comes out, silence.
Yeah, so what I always suggest for authors, especially like new authors, is to have that week where you're pubbing and the week after your content already scheduled in there. And then let yourself also just post sporadically, like do fun stories that have something to do with your book, do fun different events for people. The more that you can create like the feeling of fun around your book, the more it's going to sell. Because I think a lot of times we're like, oh my gosh, I have to sell this book. I have to sell this book. And we forget like people are on the internet to have fun. They're on the internet to escape. They're going to your books to escape. So if you're acting like, oh, I just need to sell this, it sometimes just doesn't work and can get really frustrating. And then from like the writing perspective, something I always tell clients after their book comes out is if you either take a break or write the next one, because sometimes the anxiety is coming from I'm not making enough sales. So they just need to write so that they can get their mind off of that situation, you know?
Yeah, so there's the people who are like, I'm like Tara. I go 9 to nothing, and then the book comes out, and I need to collapse. But then there's also people that won't be able to rest until they know, okay, volume 2 is written, and off to the editors, and now I can rest. But ultimately, again, it comes back to what Tara has been saying. Remember why you're writing,
Yep.
and if that writing and the pleasure of writing draft 2 is a form of rest for you, then there's your win. And if it adds to the stress of your release, then maybe take a break and come back to it. Becca,
Sure.
what do you think about the post-launch phase?
Yeah, so with the social media stuff too, like I love the idea of having stuff scheduled ahead of time. I also tell people like create a list of content ideas that when you're feeling burnt out and you are like, I am not feeling inspired for social media today, you can go back to that list and find something in there that is fun and inspiring to you. Because sometimes we hit days where we draw a blank and we stare at the screen forever. And have almost like writer's block around social media. So have those things that you can go and grab, and every time you come up with an idea, go dump it in there for a rainy day sort of thing. You know what I mean? So you can go grab that and use that as you are feeling a little more tired or burnt out, if you will. And then as far as the writing stuff, like I 100% agree with the rest thing. Like I think that allowing ourselves to rest and celebrate, we don't always do that. We have this like sense, or at least I know I do, this sense of like I always have to be producing something. I always have to be productive. And it's like it gets tied to our self-worth, which is ugh. But it's something that we have to work through with our mindsets. And like for me, when I first started taking a break, even on weekends or whatever, I had to make myself do it, and I had to tell someone else that I was taking a break so that they could be like, why are you working right now? You know what I mean? So having that accountability, even if that is helpful to you, can help. But I highly recommend letting yourself rest, and don't feel like you immediately have to be this content machine turning out more content. So that's what I would add there.
Yeah, and I know Tara. I know it's time. We got a couple questions we're going to answer, but I know Tara's got to hop off. Thank you so much for your time and for all your wonderful advice. All right, so let's get into some questions. Let's go back over to comments. I wonder if the disappearing silence comes from exhaustion too. It's a lot of work and there are a lot of high expectations, and if those aren't met, it's hard to find the motivation to move forward. Now I've not been doing this as long as Becca or as Hannah by far. I can only speak to my personal experience from one book. But I can say that I had to learn the hard way. Don't let your sales numbers be what validates your author journey, especially not for the first book. You barely have a platform. Your readers are just now getting to know you. Chances are you've given away hundreds of free books just to build your newsletter up with lead magnets, and don't let your numbers be. This is I am or I am not. Give it a few books before you determine that. It's a lot of high expectations, but a lot of those are ones that I put on myself in my case, and having to realize that my readers don't have those expectations of me. I give my readers the expectations that they will have of me based on what I tell them in my newsletters and my output. And if I promise them I'm putting out 4 books a year, they'll have that expectation, but they have that because that's what I told them. So but that's just me as a newbie. So you two being more pros at this, I'd love to hear your input about the expectations and finding motivation to move forward once the first book's out. It's been out.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Oh, I said once the book's out, it's been out a little while.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree that like the other people out there don't know your expectations, and also you're not a number. And a lot of people, like, it takes multiple books to like gain that momentum. And you can't go off of just like what happens in that first week or two, because you're not in the same place in that journey as those people who have been building that momentum for 10 books or whatever. And you can't compare yourself to that, because that's not fair to you. Those are really high expectations that are usually unachievable. So you have to be a little more easy on yourself, and try not to. I really like what Victoria Schwab said. I guess now she likes to be called V. So V Schwab, when she talks about keeping your eyes on your own paper, basically. So not looking at what someone else is doing, whether that's writing or accomplishments or sales or any of that. Not listening to all that, and just focusing on you and what you can control and what you're in charge of and responsible for.
Yeah. Hannah, do you have anything you would add to that?
Sure. First off, love, you are not a number, because that is so important to remember, because I think you can get wrapped up with that, with like your marketing, all of your efforts, feeling like you're just a number to people and no one really cares. And sometimes that happens the most when you just publish a book, because sometimes the sales expectations aren't realistic for new authors, especially because, okay, so basically my family is a bunch of authors, and I grew up with a publisher around me, and it's really changed since I was a child to now, like what the publishing world looks like. So there's just so much more competition. And for that reason, I think people put a lot of expectations and can't live up to them. But the magic does not come from your launch, in my opinion. It comes from you keeping on talking about that book. It comes from that 5 years after, where you keep recirculating your backlist. And then also it comes from publishing more books, because when you have one book out, usually your first book is never going to be your most successful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think tying into seeing yourself as a number can be tempting to view your readers as a number, which is what we definitely don't want to do.
Mhm.
At least most of us don't start out that way. Our readers are not numbers. Our readers are the people that we've hoped would connect with our books so badly. And then when you start looking at, I'm this close to the top 100, I'm this close to the orange tag, the bestseller tag, then you can sort of start just focusing in on, oh, sales, sales, sales. But again, stop and look at the people who have bought your book. What are they saying about your book? What are they loving for your book? And that's a motivation for me, is not the numbers that I hit or didn't hit, but the reviews from people who are like, I love this book, or this book was for me. And it's like, even though there's some not as great reviews, which are welcome too. I love reviews of any kind. um, it's the 5-star ones from people that was shocked, resonated with it. Try to use those over your sales numbers, I guess.
Mhm.
I've used reading goals to help me stick to breaks. Me too. I read to keep sane. Joining late. Glad I managed to catch live. Thank you so much for joining. So Hannah and Tara and Becca are all very active in the community. I have posted the links to their websites on the description box here, but they also have Instagram accounts. I didn't post those because I wasn't really sure. Like, Becca has more than one, depending on what you're looking for support. Even if you're not sure what you're looking for, I highly recommend giving them a follow because I have learned so much from all three, and it just shows the value community because all three of you guys do some things that overlap and some things that are different, but you're still willing to all come together and share with the authors. And if you're a new author and you're watching live, please, 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 please plug in with a supportive author community like Instagram because we're not competition. We're all in this together. So
100%.
100%.
I completely agree too. Yeah, and the more you act like it's a competition, the more it doesn't work. So
Yeah. I found that when you collaborate with people and like lift each other up, that's when like the magic happens, if you will. Like that's when the most amazing things happen. You make amazing connections, you get awesome opportunities, and you make really good friends. So
That's
not a
right.
competition. I like that.
Well, thank you so much again for joining me. This has been such a huge honor, Becca and Hannah. If you're watching and you're looking for a social media manager, you're looking for a book coach, please check out Becca and Hannah's sites. Tara has a wait list for her coaching, so you might get on her wait list if you're looking for her, but definitely check out their content because it's fantastic. This has been so great. I really appreciate it. Thank you everybody who joined. We will be continuing our indie author live chat series and the indie author behind the scenes series for the next couple months at least. I'm sort of taking it month by month, but we have Nerdy Book Box is going to come on with Sophie Beware of the Reader and a PR specialist to talk about indie book boxes and book promotions in a couple weeks at the beginning of April. And then behind the scenes, I'm delving into what it was like filing taxes as an author for the first time this week. So,
That's important too.
yeah, it's never fun, but it's important.
Yes, it is. So yeah, like or subscribe and you can get notifications for the other videos. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.